Hey kids, we are on Stargirl, chapter 19. If you've been reading this along with me, then you know that Leo and Stargirl have started dating. No one is talking to them. They've all shunned Stargirl because of her cheerleading ways, because they feel like it's her responsibility that the basketball team lost their winning streak. So, Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli, chapter 19. The Amish in Pennsylvania have a word for it. What's that? I said. Shunning. I was at Archie's. I had to talk to someone. Well, that's what's happening. The shunnee, so to speak, has gotten himself in Dutch with the church, so he's excommunicated. The whole community is in on it. Unless he repents, nobody speaks to him for the rest of his life, not even his family. What? That's right, not even his family. What about his wife? Wife, kids, everybody. His pipe had gone out. He relit it with a stick match. I believe the idea is to drive him away, but some stay, continue working on the farm, having dinner. If he passes the salt to his wife, she ignores it. If the bishop had his way, the pigs and chickens would ignore him. It's as if he doesn't exist. I nodded. I know the feeling. We were on the back porch. I stared out at Senor Seguaro. He said, "Does it happen to you when you're not with her?" "No," I said. "At least I don't think so. But when I'm with her, I feel like it's aimed at me, too." A small pipe cloud left the corner of his mouth. He smiled sadly. Poor dolphin. Caught in a tuna net. I picked up Barney, the Paleocene rodent skull. I wondered if someone would be holding Cinnamon's head 60 million years from now. So what should I do? Archie waved his hand. "Oh, well, that's the easy part. Stay away from her. Your problem's kaput." I sneered. "Great advice. You know that it's not that easy." He did, of course, know, but he wanted me to say it. I told him about the Valentine, the night in her driveway, the walk in the desert. The question that came to mind then sounded silly, but it persisted. "Do you believe in enchanted places?" He took the pipe from his mouth and looked straight at me. "Absolutely." I was confused. "But you're a scientist, a man of science, a man of bones. You can't be up to your eyeballs in bones and not believe in enchanted places." I looked at Barney. I ran my fingertip along the hard line of his 2-inch jaw, rough like a cat's tongue. 60 million years in my hand. I looked at Archie. "Why can't she be..." He finished it for me. "Like everybody else?" He stood up, stepped down from the porch onto the desert. For his backyard, except for the shed where he kept his digging tools, was the desert. Nature did the landscaping. I put Barney down and joined him. We ambled toward Senor Seguaro. "Not like everybody else," I said. "Not exactly. Not totally, but Archie..." I stopped. He stopped. I turned full face to him. My thoughts and feelings were a wild, conflicting jumble. After staring stupidly at him for a long time, I blurted, "She cheers for the other team." Archie pulled the pipe from his mouth, as if to better digest my words. He raised one finger in the air. He nodded solemnly. "Ah, yes." We resumed walking. He walked on past the tool shed, past Senor Seguaro. Occasionally, I picked up a stone and flung it toward the purple marcopas. Archie said, almost in a whisper, "She's not as easy to put into words, is she?" I shook my head. "An unusual girl," he said. "Could see that from the first time, and her parents as ordinary in a nice way as could be. How did this girl come to be?" I used to ask myself. Sometimes I thought she should be teaching me. She seems to be in touch with something that the rest of us are missing. He looked at me. I nodded. He turned the mahogany bowl of his pipe upside down and rapped it with his knuckles. A small stream of ash spilled into a thicket of dead mesquite. He pointed the pipe stem at me. "You know, there's a place we all inhabit, but we don't much think about it. We're scarcely conscious of it, and it lasts for less than a minute a day." "What's that?" I said. "It's in the morning for most of us. It's that time, those few seconds where we come out of sleep, but we're not really awake yet. For those few seconds were something more primitive than what we are about to become. We've just slept the sleep of our most distant ancestors, and something of them and their world still clings to us. For those few moments we are unformed, uncivilized. We are not the people we know as ourselves, but creatures more in tune with a tree than a keyboard. We are untitled, unnamed, natural, suspended between was and will be, the tadpole before the frog, the worm before the butterfly. We are, for a few brief moments, anything and everything we could be. And then he pulled out his pouch and repacked his pipe. Cherry scent flew. He struck a match. The pipe bowl, like some predator or seducer, drew down the flame. And then, we open our eyes and the day is before us, and we become ourselves. Like so many of Archie's words, they seemed not to enter through my ears, but to settle on my skin, there to burrow like tiny eggs awaiting the rain of my maturity, when they would hatch and I would at last understand. We walked in silence. Yellow blooms had appeared on cactus, and for some reason that made me incredibly sad. The purple of the mountains flowed like watercolor. They hate her, I said. He stopped. He looked intently at me. He turned me around and we headed back. He put his arm around my shoulder. Let's consult Senor Seguaro. Shortly, we were standing before the derelict giant. I never understood how the senor managed to convey a sense of dignity, majesty even, considering his sticky, rickety, see-through skeleton and the ridiculous, leathery crumple of hide about his foot. His fallen breeches. Archie always spoke to him with respectful formality as to judge or visiting dignitary. "Good day, Senor Seguaro," he began. "I believe you know my friend and charter member of the Loyal Order of the Stone Bone, Mr. Borlock." He whispered an aside to me. I'm a little rusty, but I think I'll use Spanish now. He prefers it on delicate matters. He turned back to the cactus. Now, I'm going to just tell you a disclaimer right here. I'm not sure I'm that great at Spanish, but I'm going to try to read this. You ready? "Parce, Señor Borlock, aquí es la víctima de un shunning de sus compañeros estudiantes en el liceo. El objeto principal de shunning es la enamorada del señor Borlock, nuestra propia señora niña estrella. Él está en búsqueda de preguntas." As Archie spoke, he looked up toward the elf-owl hole. Now, as he turned back to me and whispered, "I asked for a question." "Questions?" I whispered. "What about answers?" But he was turning from me, tilting his head toward the great cactus, his fingers on his lips. "Shh!" His eyes closed. I waited. At last he nodded and turned back to me. "The esteemed senor says there is only one question." "What's that?" I said. "He says it all boils down to this, if I'm translating correctly. Whose affection do you value more, hers or the other's? The senor says everything will follow from that." I wasn't sure I understood the senor any more than I understood Archie half the time, but I said nothing, and I went home. In bed that night, as the moonlight reached high tide under my chin, I realized that in fact I understood the question perfectly. I just didn't want to answer it.